The regular meeting of the Mishawaka Common Council for October 25th, 2021 will please come to order. Good evening, folks. For those of you who are in attendance with us this evening, welcome. We're glad to have you. A couple of our standard rules and expectations are for those of you who have a cell phone with you, and in this era, that's most of us, if you would please check to make sure that your cell phone is turned off or at least on vibrate. And then also for those of you who are wearing a baseball hat, if you would, please remove that during the meeting, and we appreciate your help along those lines. For those of you who are participating remotely, once again this evening, we are offering remote access to the public for purposes of participation in our meeting. To that end, members of the public will be asked to place their microphone on mute during the meeting with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in the public hearing, I will invite the public to unmute their microphone for purposes of submitting such comments as they wish to make, one person at a time. All persons wishing to make public comments will be asked to first state their name and address for the record, and after completing his or her public comments, members of the public will once again be asked to place their microphone on mute. And we thank all of you for your cooperation, whether you are participating remotely or you are live and in person with us this evening. And with that, if you would, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. DeMade?
Here.
Mr. Benicki?
Here.
Mr. Hazen?
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Here.
Mr. Emmons?
Here.
Mr. Belovich?
Here.
Mr. Compton?
Here.
Mrs. Volker?
Here.
Mr. Hicksenbach?
Here. Approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of October 11th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, then the minutes will stand approved as received from the clerk's office. And we'll move into petitions, communications, remonstrance, and memorial.
Yes, Mr. President, we have a letter from the City Plan Commission regarding their recommendations from their October 12th, 2021 meeting. Honorable members, a regular meeting of the Mishawaka Plan Commission was held on the above referenced date, at which time the following proposed ordinances were considered. Petition number 2021-16, a petition submitted by GLC MAP McKinley Trust seeking to rezone vacant land north of 410 West McKinley Avenue from C1 Shopping Center Commercial District to C7 Automobile-Oriented Restaurant Commercial District for a future outlot. The Commission, with a vote of 7-0, recommended approval. Petition number 2021-17, a petition submitted by Wenningson LLC and Foxfire Safety, Inc., requesting to annex and zone 12452 and 12434 Lincoln Way East to C1 General Commercial District and I-1 Light Industrial District. The Commission, with a vote of 7-0, recommended approval. Pursuant to Indiana Code 36-7-4-605, the Mishawaka Plan Commission hereby certifies to the Mishawaka Common Council the attached proposed ordinance regarding the above matters. This is signed by Carrie Myers, Administrative Planner.
Thank you. This evening, we have no report of any special committee, so we will move into ordinances on first reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-38, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the Zoning Ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is rezoning future outlot from C2 Shopping Center to C7 Automobile-Oriented Restaurant Commercial, vacant land north of 210 West McKinley Avenue.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-38 will be assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-39, an ordinance annexing contiguous territory to the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, and providing zoning classification therefore. This is annexation and rezoning for 12452 and 12434 Lincoln Way East from I-1 to C1 General Commercial and I-1 Light Industrial.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-39 will be assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-40, an ordinance amending ordinance 5712, fixing the salaries of all employees of the City of Mishawaka except the Mishawaka Park Department, elected officials, and the Mishawaka Utilities for the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, for the year beginning January 1st, 2021. This is amending salary ordinance to add position of Police Forensic Lab Technician and Property Room Specialist. The petitioner has requested first and second reading.
Thank you. At this time, consistent with the request of the petitioner, the chair would entertain a motion to suspend our regular council rules and hold first and second reading this evening on proposed ordinance number 2021-40.
So moved.
Second, excuse me.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to suspend our regular council rules and hold first and second reading on proposed ordinance number 2021-40 this evening, consistent with the request of the petitioner. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The record will reflect that the council has voted unanimously to suspend our council rules and hold first and second reading. And with that, we will move into second reading on proposed ordinance number 2021-40. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance, if you would, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council members, Dave Woodmayor here to address, first of all, thank you for amending your rules to allow first and second reading tonight. So the amendments, first and foremost, want to mention the Police Forensic Lab Technician Property Room Specialist. That was a position that needed to be hired rather immediately due to, as you may have heard, South Bend pulled out of the Metro Homicide cooperative that we had between the City of South Bend, St. Joseph County Police, the Prosecutor's Office, as well as the City of Mishawaka. So they're taking no new cases as of October 15th, and the group will be disbanded by the end of the year. We will not, however, get caught flat-footed. We are already preparing to take on that responsibility. And so this is part of preparing for those duties. We were already able to successfully hire a person for this position. In fact, I believe she started today. So we probably ought to change the salary ordinance. We have till the end of the year to do that, I believe. But anyway, so that's that. I can also address any other, highlights to the salary ordinance now, or if you'd rather wait till we deal with some of them in other parts of your agenda, that's totally up to you.
My suggestion would be that we defer on those further comments since, as I understand it, we're amending the 2021 salary ordinance, and those issues would pertain to the 2022 salary ordinance. So, with that, anything else, Your Honor?
No, nothing really to add, other than it's a position we very much need going forward. It's vital to public safety, and not only will this position help with assuming the homicide duties that we're going to have, but also with some of the other duties that we have, whether in regards to burglary, anything that would require, evidence and that type of thing. And it's a great time to hire this position because we're looking to pretty immediately start planning for a move from one police department building into a new one. So in which case we have lab space in the new building, we have much bigger evidence space and more capability. So this person will actually really benefit us in organizing that and getting us off to a great start.
Thank you. Any questions for Mayor Wood? Mr. Benicki?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor, is this person going to be a sworn officer or a civilian?
Civilian employee.
Okay, thank you.
We're also able to, it's not, even though it's a new FTE, we're taking some of the budgeted amounts that we have used in the past to pay for, say, part-time employees. So some of that will be offset by that, if I speak correctly. Yes, I do. The controller nodded.
Thank you. Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mayor, for the description and the information given. Just a couple questions. If you could confirm, we used to send some of this stuff out off-site, even outside of the Metro Homicide, correct?
Correct. depending on the case.
Right, so would we be able to do this in-house now, or are there still gonna be some things that we're gonna have to send off?
I'm sure that's situational depending, and, the chief might be better prepared to answer that than me, depending on, whatever situation comes up. But, it's our intent to do as much of this in-house as possible. Not only do we have this person, but we have hired some officers in very recent years with some very good expertise in this area, whether it be lab and investigations of this magnitude. So we feel like we're in a very good spot to handle a lot of this in-house. We think that a department our size ought to have this discipline in-house, and it may help us with recruiting too. So we're very excited about that. And in fact, I just hired conditionally two officers last week, so we are at full staff plus one. First time I recall being there in my 20-some years of city government.
Probably in 50 years. I don't think we've ever been over.
Well, that's great, I think it's a great addition to the department, and also hopefully it will help on lead time, trying to get some of those results back quicker, so, excited.
Thank you, Mr. Mamalani. Mr. Belovich.
Yes, Mayor, the person that we're hiring, does she have experience?
She
this
has
area?
extensive experience in this area, specifically dealing with Metro Homicide Unit. So there will be nothing new for her. She's already doing this job, essentially. She's a lateral transfer from another department.
Thank you.
Mr. Bednicki.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Mayor, now, you said that they stopped taking cases at Metro Homicide on the 15th. So what happens to the Heavenly Goat type investigations, things like that? Does that still lay on the prosecutor's office? Does that come back to Mishawaka and we've got to start on our own?
Well, that's in process. Thankfully, in Mishawaka, there's not a lot of unsolved. I think there might be two, one, which is the Heavenly Goat, and one, which is a very old case.
Okay.
We have a commitment from some people who have been involved in those investigations in the past to continue on. But we're still working and formalizing those kinds of things.
Okay.
And then any homicide that should pop up, we're in a good position to investigate with our expertise on staff.
Thank you.
Mr. Hazen.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to echo what the mayor said. I know this came to a shock to the citizens, and a lot of us felt it was a blow, but I can tell you, I think it's really a blessing in disguise for Mishawaka. The new building we're building, we're going to be able to equip it the way we need to. We got excellent officers through some hiring over the last couple of years, hires like this, and I really do think it will help us recruit. I mean, we're big enough that we need our own investigative unit, and I think it's going to help out.
Thank you.
So I would also add that it's conceivable that we might come before the council again, just as things may arise. We're looking to have our own Metro Homicide Unit vehicle. There might be some equipment purchases that we're going to need that we didn't frankly foresee last year at this time, but now, we, like I said, we will not get caught flat-footed. Public will see, I think, better service. Metro Homicide did an outstanding job, but I think our officers, our expertise is very good. So I don't think our citizens should have any concern at all. But we may have some equipment, additional equipment requests, which may need to come before the council.
Mrs. DeMade.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mayor, good evening. Will this new lab tech, will she have staff? And so will it be civilian or will it be sworn officers?
So right now, we're not planning on staff. There already are evidence clerks and different things at the police department. Those are civilian employees. So one of the things we've been doing is we have, in my tenure, increased the amount of officers on the street by hiring additional, but we've also taken certain officers who have a discipline that is very unique, say IT, and we've civilianized those and then taken and not eliminated the officer spot. So it allows us to move, say, we had an officer, sworn officer, who was in IT. He retired from the department. We hired him on the civilian side to do essentially the same function. And so he's still providing great service expertise to the city. We were then able to hire a new officer who's now out on the street where, previously the officer had duties that wouldn't allow him to go on the street. So we're doing creative things like that, but typically these are civilian.
Great, thank you.
But they will have officers who are engaged in that activity too. So some of it has to be,
Right.
some of it is,
Mr. Emmons?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, has there been appointed a person from the police department that's going to head up the homicide department in Mishawaka? Has there been an officer that's going to head it up? or-
We have a couple or a few officers who are very good in that expertise. We also have an officer assigned to Metro Homicide who will be very involved in this. Right now, we're still kind of, working that out. Our officers who have that expertise will absolutely be involved in every investigation, and it'll be multiple officers involved. So the chain of command comes into play and all of that, so.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mayor Wood? Mr. Mayor, thank you for the information that you shared with us this evening. And I suppose more to the point, thank you for the work that your administration, Chief Witkowski in particular, and those who have assisted in ramping up for this responsibility that at the beginning of the year that we didn't know we were going to have to take on in-house. But we appreciate the work that was done there. And I think we all would agree that we are fortunate enough to have an abundance of talent, both in our sworn officers and our civilian employees in the police department, and it's pleasing to hear that we're going to be expanding the number of people that we're bringing on board. And certainly, I also appreciated your comment about the need for us to perhaps look at some additional expenditures as we get into it and identify some other needs, both in terms of equipment and even manpower. And, I certainly would be open to the consideration of that as those needs become known, and not just because of this newfound responsibility, but because we've heard in these chambers and in other settings that there is a desire on the part of the community to look to see us, to have us look to expand our public safety services. So thanks for the work that has been done, and we'll look forward to hearing from you how the transition moves forward from this point.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward. Seeing no one, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Then is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? Please come forward. Is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 9-0.
Thank you. This evening, we have no business under resolution, so we'll move into ordinances on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2021-34, Civil City Budget and Tax Levy for 2022. This is a vote only.
Thank you. The record will, I'm sorry, may we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Budget and Finance, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2021-34, report that they have examined said matter and that, in their opinion, it should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Then at this point, having conducted a public hearing on the 2022 Civil City Budget and Tax Levy at our last council meeting, we are at the point where it's certainly appropriate for us to entertain any additional questions or comments from the council. Hearing none, then just let me reiterate our thanks to the controller and the mayor, the department heads, everyone involved in putting this budget together. We heard a very detailed summary from the mayor at the last meeting with regard to the high points of the changes in this budget. I think there is a great deal to be proud of that's reflected in this budget, not the least of which are the investments that we're making in expanding our code enforcement department so that we can address quality of life issues in Mishawaka. We just got done speaking about some of the enhanced investment that we're going to make in public safety, and that's also reflected in this budget as well, which again improves our quality of life. As was indicated at the last council meeting, I think we need to be open to continuing to beef up our public safety resources, human and otherwise, as we identify issues moving through the remainder of the year. But as we just got done discussing, I think that is a shared goal on the part of the council and the administration to also always invest what we need to invest to promote high-quality public safety in Mishawaka. So thanks again to everyone who has been involved in the process, including the council members who participated in any number of budget committee meetings leading up to this evening. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments, I will call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Opposed ordinance passes 9-0. Proposed ordinance number 2021-35, an ordinance amending the salaries of certain elected officials of the city of Mishawaka for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2022. Amendment has been requested.
Thank you. At this point, consistent with the recommendation of the controller, the chair would entertain a motion to amend proposed ordinance 2021-35 in order to accurately reflect the certification language applicable to the city clerk's office.
So moved?
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to amend proposed ordinance 2021-35 in order to accurately reflect certification opportunities for the clerk's office. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Then we will move forward with the committee report, please.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hammonds.
thank you. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Budget and Finance, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2021-35, they report that they have examined said matter and that their opinion, it should be presented to the council as a whole. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Then with that, we will proceed with the second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2021-35 as amended. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance, if you would, please come forward.
Mr. President, council members, Dave Wood, Mayor, you're going to be sick of me by the end of the evening, I suspect. But anyway, here to speak in support, encourage you to support proposed ordinance number 2021-35, the elected officials salary ordinance. Now, these fall on the agenda a little opposite of the way I would like them because the elected officials tend to follow suit with what the rest of the city does. And so we are requesting a 5% increase for the elected officials. And that is because we typically, at least in my tenure, we are not treated any differently than the average city employee. So we have requested 5% for raises for all city employees, non-park, non-elected official as well, and public safety as well, as you are aware, because you are responsible for those raises. But anyway, so the elected officials, we tend to follow, as I said, what we do around the city, but also there's one amendment, and that is to update the Certified Public Finance Administrator certification to align with the same certification that the controller's budget has in it. That's a $57.90 biweekly expense if people have the certification. So that would be the only amendment there. And I'm sure our esteemed city clerk could probably speak to that a little better than I could, but that's,
You've done just fine.
oh, well, thank you. So that would be it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mayor Wood? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance as amended? If so, please come forward to the podium. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Is there anyone in attendance this evening in the chambers who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? If so, please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? Thank you. Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Demate,
Yes.
Mr. Benicki,
Yes.
Mr. Hazen,
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti,
Yes.
Mr. Emmons,
Yes.
Mr. Belovich,
Yes.
Mr. Compton,
Yes.
Mrs. Volker,
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh.
Yes.
Proposed ordinance as amended passes 9-0. Proposed ordinance number 2021-36, an ordinance amending the salaries of all employees of the city of Mishawaka except sworn public safety, Mishawaka Park Department, elected officials, and the Mishawaka Utilities for the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, for the year beginning January 1st, 2022.
Thank you. And once again, if I'm not mistaken, we have a request for
Yes.
amendment of this proposed ordinance in the following particulars. The first item that has been requested would be the deletion of the term fund and the addition of the term finance in the controller section of this ordinance dealing with those advanced certifications. The second item would be to amend the proposed ordinance so that the clerk's office certifications that were just referenced in conjunction with the elected officials' ordinance would be accurately reflected in the general civil city salary ordinance that's in front of us. And then the third amendment would be to add the lab tech property room specialist position to next year's salary ordinance, consistent with the action that was taken earlier, to add that same position to this year's salary ordinance. So at this point in time, the chair would entertain a motion to make those revisions to the proposed ordinance as was just read.
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to amend and revise the proposed ordinance in order to make the three changes that were just read into the record. Are there any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The amendment passes unanimously. And with that, may we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Budget and Finance, to whom I've referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2021-36, report that they have examined said matter, and that their opinion, it should be presented to the council as a whole. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance. Excuse me.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We will then move into the second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2021-36 as amended. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium.
Mr. President, council members, good evening. Mayor Dave Wood here to speak in favor of proposed ordinance number 2021-36, the city employee salary ordinance. We are here asking that the council consider 5% for the 2022 salary increases. These are not what we were originally considering. We were thinking about more in line of a 2% raise, but the council negotiated 5% for public safety, and I feel strongly that the rest of the civil city, our public servants, should get 5% as well, based on the great work that they do serving our public day in, day out. Whether it's keeping streets clear of snow or storm debris or whatever it is that our public servants do, whether it's showing up during a pandemic, here on call 24/7, 365 for our citizens. I couldn't be more proud of our public servants and proud to work shoulder to shoulder with them. All of them, by and large, have a passion to serve the Princess City and our citizens. We're all blessed to be served by them. I'm a citizen here first and foremost, and I can tell you, I sleep better at night knowing that we have some great people on duty all the time. And so we're requesting the 5% to match what was given to public safety. There are a couple of notable exceptions to that, which I can address if you'd like me to.
Why don't you go ahead and do that, please?
Okay, the street department commissioner, we're requesting essentially what would amount to about a 12% raise for him to align with the park department superintendent, department manager position. He runs an operation that is substantial in terms of human resources, in terms of budget, in terms of complexity. And so we're requesting a salary of $73,834 for him in recognition of not only the outstanding job he does, but the complexity of the organization that he manages and does so well, given the challenges we have today. When you talk about employment, job issues out there in the market, where we're seeing businesses close because they cannot find employees. We're seeing it harder and harder in some cases to hire good employees. This is a department where it is considered more entry level in some cases, and so we struggle to keep positions filled there. When we fill them and employees do well there, they tend to go to other departments in the city and grow with the city, which is a very good thing. We love to see that. However, it creates a challenge in some of the entry-level departments, this being one. And so we're trying to meet those challenges, which is another reason why we should consider that we want to stay competitive with our peers, as well as with being competitive in the marketplace so that we can attract and keep good workers. On the IT side, we're requesting that we promote the system specialist 4 position to assistant director with an additional $5,000 in salary. It's a small but mighty department, as you've seen throughout COVID. They were here to answer the call, to make sure that our meetings are kept public and accessible to the public, even when public can't come inside our building. They were here, again, 24/7, 365 when needed, to make sure that all systems were go here at the city. And like I said, it's a small department, just a handful of people. And when a director has to be a practitioner, that can create some issues. And so having an assistant director when a director is out in the field, we think is a good thing. Planning, we are incredibly busy as a growing city, and that is nowhere more evident than our planning department. So we are requesting a new executive director level position in which case the city planner would move into it. The city planner position would then be open, and we expect promotion from within the department. Then a senior planner, economic development specialist position would revert back to the senior planner. The net change to the department would be essentially one new FTE. And so that's one change. And then we're also requesting stipends for the Board of Public Works and Safety, who take on duties outside of their normal department responsibilities. So we're requesting $1,500 for the president, $1,000 for members. And then that is generally the exceptions to the salary the salary ordinance. Again, 5% we think is in line with what we're seeing out there in the market, especially with our peers. We think it keeps us in a positive, competitive level to not only attract, but to keep and retain our workers here.
Thank you. Questions for Mayor Wood? Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Not necessarily a question, but more of a comment. I couldn't have said it better. Your statements regarding the men and women that we have working for our city do an outstanding job. I know this is one of the largest raises that I've seen since I've been on here, and I can't think of a better time to do it. So appreciate the help and the efforts, and make with the controller as well making this work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Compton?
Yeah, along those same lines, Mayor Wood, you know, you and I had discussion about the budgets and raises and public safety, and, you know, we discussed this, and I understand your conservativeness in fiscal conservativeness in these areas, and watching out for the budget and the fiscal cliff and into the future. I understand that. I do appreciate, as I talked and expressed to you, I think, and as Mr. Mamaleni said, that if there was a time, now was a time we could show, and it was perfect timing in my mind, that we could show our city employees the appreciation of getting through what is an extremely challenging year. And so I just wanted to thank you publicly for coming to that conclusion. You know, I hope maybe our discussions might have nudged you a little bit, but, you know, all in all, I know you're a fair person, and you'd like, as you've said before, we'd like to do these things, but it's about, you know, watching our pocketbook and watching our checkbook and just making sure. So I appreciate that. I appreciate what, I know, I'm sure the citizens do. I know the policemen and firemen do. Thank you very much appreciated.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments.
Thank you. Other questions for His Honor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance, if you would, please come forward. Is there then anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Is there anyone physically present who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? Then is there anyone who is participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Mr. Benicki?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to also publicly thank the mayor and Becky, you know, for the hard work that they've done through these trying times. Employee retention is just impossible these days, and I think that anything that we can do to try to retain an employee, it just saves from, you know, turnover, and turnover is very tough in the private sector. Trust me, I know. So, you know, anything that we can do, and you know, we stand behind the decisions 100%. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Benicki. Any other questions or comments? Then let me echo the comments of my colleagues. I also appreciate the work that went into this, and I also am in support of what's in front of us this evening for the reasons that have been highlighted. But Mr. Benicki, I think, makes a great point. Not only is the investment that we're being asked to make tonight in our employee groups good for those individuals, but this is a great investment, in my opinion, on behalf of the entire community. For us to be able to deliver the services every day that we want to, we have to be able to recruit and retain the best and the brightest talent that's out there. So this isn't just a gift to these employees, as the mayor indicated. These are people who work hard each and every day on behalf of each and every citizen in Mishawaka, not only in our public safety ranks, but in each and every position that we have reflected in this ordinance this evening. So it's certainly worthy of support, in my opinion. One of the things that we've talked about in previous meetings, budget meetings and what have you, that we really didn't get into too much this evening is that simultaneously with what's in front of us this evening, we've also been made aware of the fact that the city is actively involved, the administration is actively involved in working with an outside consultant to comprehensively review our employee compensation related issues. And my hope is that there'll be some good actionable data that'll come out of that process so that next year when we're at this point, we'll be able to identify perhaps an even broader vista of opportunities for us to better align our compensation for employees with not just market realities, but with the good work that our employees do. So I'm excited to see what the results of that salary analysis will be, and I appreciate, again, the work that everybody has put into what's in front of us this evening. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments from the council, I will call for the question.
Question?
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. Demate,
Yes.
Mr. Benicki,
Yes.
Mr. Hazen,
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti,
Yes.
Mr. Emmons,
Yes.
Mr. Belovich.
Yes.
Mr. Compton,
Yes.
Mrs. Volker,
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh.
Yes.
Proposed ordinance as amended passes 9-0. Proposed ordinance number 2021-37, an ordinance fixing the salaries of all sworn public safety employees of the city of Mishawaka, Indiana, for the year beginning January 1st, 2022. An amendment has been requested.
Thank you. At the request of the administration and the fire chief, it has been requested that we amend proposed ordinance 2021-37 in order to add the position within the fire department of diver apprentice with a stipend compensatory amount of $500. So at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to amend the proposed ordinance as requested by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to amend the proposed ordinance by adding the position of diver apprentice at a stipend, annual stipend amount of $500 to the proposed ordinance. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, then all those in favor of the proposed amendment signify, by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Then may we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Budget and Finance, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2021-37, report that they have examined said matter and that in their opinion should be presented to the council as a whole. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to accept the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Then we will move into the second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2021-37 as amended. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward.
Mr. President, council members, Dave Wood, Mayor, here to speak in support of proposed ordinance number 2021-37. This fixes our salary ordinance for public safety, and before I get into that, I probably should have mentioned before during one of my previous visits, kind of an asterisk, that more amendments may need to happen depending on the civil city side, maybe the public safety side, depending on what happens with the collective bargaining process that has not been finalized yet. So some of those are ongoing. But back to Councilmember Compton's previous comment, it is good to be in a position through our hard work to be able to do this this year. when it is most needed. And we had, in a couple of cases, these salary ordinances covered various employee groups. We have multiple collective bargaining units that we negotiate with this year. We've had on the non-public safety side, we were in a very unique position where the labor group came in and and asked for maybe, say, 3%, and we had to reject that. And we came back with 5%. That was a unique position for us to be in, and certainly is one where I think it was very much appreciated by our labor groups, and certainly in a spirit of what they've gone through over the past year, I think not only well-deserved, but something we feel strongly that occasionally, sometimes, as you have said, we need to do things like this. No one deserves it more than public safety. They are at the forefront of our public service number one in Mishawaka, which is public safety. They're out on the front lines. They are the ones who, each and every day, are at risk so that we can value our way of life and our property. They're out there defending it for us. And sometimes that comes at risk to life. And you don't have to look back far in our history to see those risks in Mishawaka. And it is not getting any easier, I can promise you. Times are challenging. We're seeing, as is happening around the country, an increase in certain kinds of activity. Mishawaka is not immune. But I would tell you that I wouldn't trade our problems for anyone else's. I can tell you that much for sure. And that is because of the great work of the Mishawaka Police Department, great work of the Mishawaka Fire Department. I am blessed to go out to many places around the community. I was at a place yesterday where we had 50, 60 people there and received just numerous compliments about our police department and the job that they're doing in this difficult climate that we're in. And so when I see what the kinds of decisions they have to make every day, the kinds of decisions that the public don't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis, they deserve everything that we can give them, and we wish there were more. We just have to live within a budget. But we always are appreciative of their service, here to support them in the job that they do by not only giving them good wages, competitive wages, but also good benefits, support for their family, good equipment, good leadership. And I think when you factor all of those things in, I would put our departments up against anyone else's. And while we're seeing some challenges with what they have to deal with every day, we're also seeing competition from other communities who are struggling very much more than we are to hire and keep good police officers. A lot of poaching going on out there. There are departments who are doing bonuses to try to lure sworn officers away for lateral transfers. There are, communities who just frankly are struggling to hire, so much so that they, they're getting very creative in how they go after police officers. Fortunately, we're not losing them to other departments, and in fact, we are gaining them from other departments. That tells us that we have a good, our fundamentals are good here in Mishawaka, and we continue to be a place where people want to work. And so, want to speak in support of this 5% raise, wish it were more, but it is absolutely well-deserved by our public safety personnel. Couldn't be more proud of them, as I know you all are too, and they will continue to have all of our support.
Thank you. Questions for Mayor Wood? Mr. Compton?
Yes, Mayor, again, along the lines of last time, I couldn't agree more. Public safety is extremely important to this city for the citizens that are out there. The public safety consumes about 70% of Mishawaka's budget. When you look at everything that we spend on public safety, police and fire and public safety, it's about 70% of our budget. So it's extensive and it's important. And it's important that we keep these people compensated to the degree that we can, and the benefits that they have from being an employee of the Citizen Mishawaka. I want to thank the negotiating committee, Tony Hazen, Matt Mamalente, and then the rest of the council, President Hicksonbaugh. Everybody had a comment or input that was helpful, and your office, and with Becky and Pat that came to the meetings and helped out with the numbers and helped us there. So it's all very much appreciated for the work that we did. I'm glad we're able to do it. I know we won't be able to do it every year, but we felt we could this year, and we'll see what next year brings.
Thank you. Thank you for your efforts in the committee and your council efforts as a whole.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mayor Wood? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance as amended? If so, please come forward. Is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Is there then anyone in the chambers who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? If so, please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? Are there any council members who wish to speak? Mr. Mamalente.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to echo Mr. Compton's comments. I think this was a team effort with the mayor, the controller's office, the council as well, but I want to take this time for saying thanks to the fellow wage committee members, Mr. Hazen and our chair, Mr. Compton, for really rolling up their sleeves and getting to work. I would admit that this was probably one of the easier ones that we had. But as we'd mentioned before, this is probably one of the most deserving times for them to get what they need, or a little bit of what they need. I know it doesn't do it justice of what they went through this past couple years, but happy to be able to do a little bit more than what we normally do. So thanks to all involved, and appreciate the efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Mamalente. Other questions or comments from the council? Then again, I will also thank Mr. Compton for his leadership of the Public Health and Safety Committee and the work that he and Mr. Hazen, along with Mr. Mamalente, did with the assistance of some of the rest of us. One of the things that I've been most pleased about as I rejoined the council in 2019 was the concerted effort that we've made in a team fashion to try to address compensation for public safety. And there has been administrative and council work on that that I think has been beneficial for the community. But I also want to acknowledge our partners on the other side of the table, the unionized representatives of both the fire department and the FOP. I think that this was a very productive round of negotiations, not just with regard to the outcome, but also with regard to the information that was shared with us that helps us better understand the needs of each department and what we can do to try to be of assistance to them. So thank you for their work, as well as the work of the council and everyone else involved in this process. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments, I will call for the question.
Question?
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMaid?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalente?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
The proposed ordinance passes as amended, 9-0.
Thank you. We will now move into privilege of the floor, and at this time, members of the public are invited to the podium to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor. Please come forward. And if you would begin by stating your name and address for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Hi, my name's Ricardo Lopez. I live on 121 East 6th Street, really close to here. And I work for Precision Wall Systems, and I'm basically just here to address the situation that came up to me, basically that the new Liberty Mutual building that is turning into the new City Hall building got contracted to a out-of-town glazing company, Midwest Glass. And a lot of guys within my company, a lot of local construction workers, not just glazers, just as a whole, kind of rubbed them the wrong way just because when guys get laid off, that is one less building that they can go to whenever they get laid off. Again, I live on 6th Street, so if we did say if my company got it, that is like a 2-minute walk from my house to that building. Super convenient. And I don't know the business side of it. I don't know if it just came down to a better bid or whatever, but local work, I feel like, should never go to an out-of-state construction contractor, which it did. So basically just here to see what we can do as a preventative, because obviously it's already contracted to them, but there's a lot of new jobs that I've been hearing that are going to be coming soon. What is like a preventative to prevent that from basically happening for the upcoming jobs to keep it local? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Compton?
Mr. Lopez, thank you for stepping up.
Yes.
I'm a member of the IBW.
Okay.
I asked you guys to come in here so you could make your case to the rest of the council and your concern. I've been in your spot. But in this case, I was on the committee that interviewed general contractors, and then we talked about subcontractors. So I was from the city, along with the mayor, some of his staff, were in the group that hired Wygan Construction for this job. We made it very clear, the mayor made it very clear, that he wanted local contractors, local people, and frankly, as much union workers as we could get. Doesn't happen too often from a mayor to say that in a public in a meeting, but he did. Now, that said, we are dealing with taxpayer dollars. So if a qualified bidder bids it and we deem them local, and we'll talk about that I'll talk about that in a minute, whether they're union or non-union, as tough as it is when you're in that craft,
Right.
you have to go with them. If they're qualified to do the job, you really have to go with them because you're dealing with taxpayer dollars. If it's a private job, you can give people second looks. There's other things you can do that can help people out. A favored contractor. I mean, you can't, you got to be legal, but you can do
Right.
things. When you're dealing with tax dollars, much more difficult to do, and you get yourself in real deep trouble if you start trying to do that. So I look back at some things, just so you know. The glass packages were bid by Wernz, Precision, Lazaro, Midwest. Those were the bidders.
Yeah.
Those were the ones that were invited to bid. Let me clarify that. The actual bidders, and I'm going to lose it here. I got it. No, I don't have it. The actual bidders were, there were three. There it is. Midwest, Precision, and Wernz. Now, I looked Midwest up because that bothers me. They're from Stevensville, Michigan. Are they out of state? Yes. Are they in Michiana? My opinion, yes. And I understand from your opinion where you're at.
Right.
We may not agree on that. But in my opinion, yes. And the bids were really close. So what do you do? What do we do with taxpayer dollars? I heard from your business manager about this. I went back and talked to the city, and their concern was if we give one contractor a second look, we really got to give them all. And where do we stop? It was legitimate, it was on time, they can do the work, and, but in the end, I get where you're at. And I've been standing where you're at. The only trade on the job that didn't come out the way you wanted it to come out. I've been there. So all I can tell you is give you information. And when I was in your shoes, that's all I really wanted. As far as what we'll do in the future, I can tell you as long as I'm in the position and have a little bit of influence in Mishawaka, we will work with local contractors and contractors qualified to do the work. And you're correct, we do have a lot of work coming. And most of it, almost all of it, goes to local union contractors.
That's good to hear.
Occasionally, it doesn't. And yes, that's tough to be in that craft that it doesn't. But
Right.
and I'd be happy if you want to stick around, we can talk more after the meeting. And we can talk more about, what happened, how it happened, and information I can provide to you.
Okay, yeah.
But again, Mr. Lopez, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Then is there anyone who is participating remotely who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Thank you. With that, we will now move into unfinished business.
We have the matter of Resolution 2021-24, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving the interlocal agreement for the operation of a consolidated public safety answering point in St. Joseph County, Indiana.
Thank you. This is a public hearing on proposed resolution 2021-24. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward to the podium. I believe Mr. Augustino is participating remotely.
Is
If you
he?
want
All
me to
right. Well,
inquire.
I just want to, Mr. President, council members, Dave Wood Mayor, just want to give a brief nod of support for the interlocal. We have reviewed it, had some questions. Thank you for allowing for some more time so that we could go in and get some clear answers on it, and that I think Mr. Augustino will refer to. And just want to let you know that we're in support.
Thank you. Any questions for Mayor Wood? Thank you. Is there anyone else physically present, before I invite those participating remotely to speak in favor? Is there anyone else physically present who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed resolution? If so, please come forward to the podium. Seeing no one, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed resolution?
This is Peter Augustino with offices at 131 South Taylor Street in South Bend, Indiana. And I would ask your support for the resolution. It has been, the interlocal agreement has been circulated. I think we did respond to the questions that the mayor and his staff had, and I'd be glad to answer any questions on behalf of the county or with respect to the interlocal agreement, if anyone has any.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Augustino?
So are we the first council that's going to pass it?
Mr. Augustino, were you able to hear Mr. Hazen's question?
I think he asked which council was the first to pass it, is that right?
Are we the first, or did someone else already pass?
No, both South Bend and the county have approved the amended interlocal. So you would be the last to.
Okay.
We don't even need to approve it.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Augustino? Mr. Augustino, let me begin by thanking you for your work on this project. You were one of many involved, including representatives of this council and the other legislative bodies in St. Joseph County. But you have definitely been of assistance throughout the process, and we appreciate your work. Just for the record, and in particular for those who are in attendance who don't have a copy of the resolution in front of them, I'm going to try to summarize as briefly as I can the major points that are reflected in this revised interlocal agreement, and I'm going to ask you to correct me if I misstate anything. But the first major change that's reflected really builds upon the recent change in the local income tax funding that has now been directed primarily toward funding this combined dispatch center. And what has been done, as I read this resolution, is to take what's, I think, commonly referred to as the backup funding formula if the income tax revenues are not sufficient to fully fund the operation of the dispatch center, and to allocate contributions on the part of St. Joseph County, the city of South Bend, and the city of Mishawaka based upon a funding formula that is geared 25% toward net assessed value and 75% based on call volume. Would you agree that that's one change that is in this resolution?
Yes, sir, and that is a flip of the prior formula, which favored net assessed value. So I think when we looked at call volume and how it was being spread between the three main players, the new formula for the backup funding is a more accurate reflective of usage than the prior formula. So yes.
And then the second major change or revision, as I read it, expands the executive board that supervises the operation of the combined dispatch center to now include representatives of the South Bend City Council, the St. Joseph County Council, and the Mishawaka City Council. And as I understand it, through separate action of the St. Joseph County Council, the number of representatives that each of those three legislative bodies will have on the executive board will be 2 council representatives per unit. Is that accurate?
That is.
And
that action will occur, I believe, final action will take place at the November 9th meeting of the St. Joseph County Council.
thank you. I appreciate those clarifications. Any other questions for Mr. Augustino based upon my questions? Mr. Augustino, anything else that you wish to add before we ask you to mute your microphone?
I just thank you for your kind words and acknowledge all the teamwork, and it certainly seems to have played a great part in what Mishawaka does, and so we thank you.
Thank you. The thought occurs that in our earlier meetings, I was negligent in not acknowledging the work that Steve Dalton, the county's fiscal advisor, did as part of this process as well. So if you would, please pass along our appreciation to Mr. Dalton for his work on this project also.
Will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there then anyone else participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed resolution? Then is there anyone in physical attendance this evening who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed resolution? If so, please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed resolution? Hearing none, are there any council members who wish to speak? Mr. Hazen.
I just want to say that I said in these meetings with Mr. Ixenball, South Bend Council, the county council and that, and Mr. Hicksonball represented Mishawaka very well. He always had our interest at heart, even when it went against some of his friends over on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to make sure everyone knew that he did look out for Mishawaka. Sometimes he even got a little heated over there. But thank you.
Thank you for your kind words and for your work on this issue as well, Mr. Hazen. Any other comments from the council? Hearing none, then I call for the question.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMay,
Yes.
Mr. Benicki,
Yes.
Mr. Hazen,
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti,
Yes.
Mr. Emmons,
Yes.
Mr. Belovich,
Yes.
Mr. Compton,
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Yes.
The resolution passes 920. Proposed ordinance 2021-31, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, is from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is a PUD amendment to remove restrictions as a senior-only complex to become market rate, non-age restricted for Whispering Pines Apartments.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President, to the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom is referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2021-31, report that they have examined said matter and that in their opinion should be presented to the council as a whole. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With that, we will move into the second reading of public hearing on proposed ordinance 2021-31. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance, if you would, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Dennis Miller. I represent the Miller Family Development Company that built and operate the Whispering Pines Apartments, starting back in '98 on this project. It's time for me to retire, so we've put the property up for sale. We have a buyer, and the buyer's lender is requesting that we remove the senior-only restriction. Given the present economic situations that we're seeing with the inflation, and most of our tenants are on fixed incomes, I can see where this buyer would be apprehensive in the future should the inflation get to be enough that we'd start losing tenants. Initially, this property did not lease up fast at all, mainly because seniors tend to be slow movers. They don't want to leave their homes, which I understand. And so when those tenants that can't afford the increases that would come in the future, just like the fire and police department and your city workers needed an increase, we're going to need it as well to cover our increased expenses. And I can see where this buyer would want to have that ability to make a change should he need to in the future. And I think Mrs. Volkler had mentioned not having a letter from the buyer. There was a letter sent to the planning, both US mail and email, that was supposed to be in your packet.
And the record will reflect that that letter is in fact in our packet and accessible to the council.
Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any questions for Mr. Miller? Mr. Compton?
Yes, Mr. Miller, how long have you said I remember this complex, I was talking to one of the council members today about this, and I knew people that weren't retirement age that lived in there when I was much, much younger, like 40 years ago or something like that. But how long has it been this way?
We set it up to be this way.
From the inception?
Inception. We purchased the property and built the buildings. We started building in '02 and finished in maybe 15. So took us about 13 years to build the 12 buildings.
In 2015?
Yeah.
And I'm not, okay, thank you. I'm not thinking about the same place.
Thank you, Mr. Compton. Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. Hi. Appreciate the letter from the proposed purchaser. It's not super explanatory of what their plans are. So I actually was a little bit confused when you mentioned that they'd sent a letter. And I think one of my thoughts about this is, or concerns is, and you might not be able to answer these questions, but if I were a resident of Whispering Pines, I would be concerned that with the building being purchased, that the rents would change dramatically immediately. Do you, by any chance, know what the plans are on the part of the purchaser in terms of current residents and,
No, unfortunately, I don't. And as far as changing dramatically, we are at market rents right now. But we do have a number of folks that get subsidies from different agencies. And those people would, I think, be the first to be affected. We are planning our own rent increase this spring, this coming year. I don't physically operate it day to day. I have a manager that takes care of all that, but I know we have a rent increase coming.
may I ask a follow-up question? Do you by any chance know what percentage of people that currently reside in Whispering Pines would be in the subsidized category?
I think she said it was around 20%.
Okay. Okay,
Thank you, Mrs. Volk.
thank you.
Mr. Belovich.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Miller, how many occupants are there currently?
192 units are rented. Number of occupants, I'm not sure. I would guess probably 250.
Thank you.
And they're mostly 1- and 2-bedroom units. I wouldn't foresee them as a good open market rent property because they are, they have a lot of physical improvements for the senior people. And I think somebody mentioned maybe underage, but it starts at 55 and up on the age.
Mrs. Demay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, sir. The Fair Housing Act allows for 20% of the residents under 55. Do you have that in the Whispering Pines?
No.
So you have no one under the age of 55 living there?
Possibly. It's hard to say. We have, since I don't do that part, but I do see kids coming and going with their grandmothers, and I don't know how many are living temporarily, which I know that does happen and it comes and goes. We have had, the tenant that signs the lease has to be 55.
Okay.
So it'd be their relative or whoever they would have room
Okay.
with them.
And if I may, do you have a waiting list of tenants?
Yes.
And can you tell me how many are on that waiting list?
I could only guess, not a lot, I'd say maybe 3 or 4.
3 or 4?
And it rotates, and, you know, a number of our tenants have been with us quite a while, almost the whole time. They've moved in when first buildings were built and then transferred over to some of the newer buildings as we built them.
And one more question for you. The note from Mr. Wilner states that you were unaware that this was a seniors-only apartment building. How could that be?
Well, that's not exactly right. I was aware it was a senior only because that's what I wanted it to be. I didn't realize it was a restriction that it could only be that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Demay. Other questions for Mr. Miller? Mr. Panicki.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Looking back at some paperwork from May of '98, I mean, it looks like every representation was, in fact, for a senior development, including statements from the property owners that sold you the property, Ed Friend and his family, and everything says that, in fact, you know, it was very important to them that this be a senior facility. And I understand things change, but when you have a neighborhood and you have a facility next door with cooperative-type housing, and they've had this nice senior housing next door, it's beautiful. You got a 6-month-plus waiting list, I know that. But just to change it. There was a letter sent to the city today with 105 signatures against this. And that was just from, put together in the last week or so. There's some fear that if the designation is taken off, that they may try to change, the entirety of the model that it was built on. I live right in that neighborhood. I drive in that area all the time. It's beautiful. I drive back there. I know people that live there. So it's just very hard to say, by taking off that designation, it's really not going to change much. We don't know what's going to happen with different incomes of people. There's a lot of people that have great incomes, and, they just downsize. I know that there's just a lot of concern about changing that designation. And when the previous family that sold you the property was very adamant that they wanted senior housing, I mean, do we give that up for the dollar? Is that what we're doing? So I'm concerned about that. And somebody somewhere would buy it as is with the waiting list you have. You got a beautiful facility. Maybe these aren't the people. I don't know. And that's something that you would have to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bernicki. Other questions for Mr. Miller? Mr. Hazen?
Do you know if the buyer has tried other financial institutions? I mean, has they only went to one and the one said, we got to have this off? Okay. And how long has this been on the market? And is he the first guy that's?
Well, it really wasn't on the market.
Okay, you had somebody,
It's more political in that
okay.
we're talking about raising the rates for profits from 21 to 40, and so it's kind of a toss-up as to whether to stay or go, or
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hazen. Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hazen brought up an interesting point that spawned a question of mine. So the potential buyer had approached you. It wasn't for sale. So he or she knew that this was a 55 and up community, correct? I'm assuming.
I've never really talked to the buyer.
Okay.
I had another complex in South Bend that I sold a couple years ago, and that broker had contacted me. Actually, they wanted to buy it back then, but I wasn't ready to sell. And so this broker contacted me and said he had a buyer for it, and they were paying considerably more than any quotes I'd gotten from other people. In this market, I was getting 2-3 calls a month from brokers wanting to buy property. And so I did entertain one company out of Indianapolis just to get an idea of where we're at dollar-wise. And this company came in with an offer considerably more than what the other company had estimated they could get for it.
Okay. I just, and Mr. Bernicki had brought up some great points as well, and I feel that there's so much at risk in affecting the elderly population just by on this one decision to lift this restriction when you had a potential buyer come to you, it wasn't even on the market. You have 100% capacity. You have a waiting list. I think this would be extremely marketable or of great value to purchase, and still be able to keep this at the 55 and older restriction on it as well. So I'm going to listen to the other folks that I'm sure are here to speak this evening, but I just wanted to give you my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Is there anyone else physically present who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If so, please come forward to the podium. Then is there anyone participating? Oh, I'm sorry. No, right now we're in favor. That's okay. You'll have your chance in just a second here. I'll ask again, before someone gets drugged down in their seat. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward to the podium. Then seeing no one, is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed?
I would like to.
Then, sir, if you would, please begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Peter Jankowski. And my address is 3327 Montmartre Circle. And that's in West Bloomfield, Michigan.
Thank you, sir.
I am the broker that's representing the purchaser of the property. And we just wanted to kind of weigh in as to address some of the questions that I've been listening to. I know a few of you were here last time I spoke, but I'm going to reiterate that the purchaser is based out of New York. They have at least 4 communities in the state of Indiana, and I know they have about, I want to say 30 others throughout the country. They're a professional group that's paying, like Dennis said, a very high price for the property, and they would not be willing to sacrifice the integrity of the property and their investment by running it poorly or having undesirable people in the property that are going to cause a nuisance for other tenants and would result in increased vacancy. The property is already market rate. So if Dennis wanted to go tomorrow and jack up the rents when leases expire, he has every right to do that. So it's not more or less raising rights or economics or anything for the current tenants. It's providing the purchaser with the flexibility to, if 10 people move out and there's no waiting list and he doesn't have anyone that's 55 or up that could go and lease the units, but now he can go and have a 30-year-old professional or whoever he wants in the property. And that's what the lender's problem really is. They can't kick any of the tenants out. Once they purchase the property, they have to go through with whatever lease Dennis has in place. They don't want to kick tenants out because kicking tenants out or doing anything like that costs them money to go and paint a unit or put new carpet in or new appliances or anything like that. And everyone knows that the idea for an investment is to keep making money and not spend on it if you don't have to. Being able to keep the occupancy up lets the purchaser go and continue to maintain the property, do any improvements they have to do, and it just gives them flexibility and gives the lender peace of mind. And as far as going to other banks and institutions, they're more difficult than ever due to COVID-19 right now. And once you get into a certain price range, you can't go to community banks and things like that and get favorable financing. These are going out to the larger markets.
Thank you, sir. Are any questions from the council? Mr. Benicki.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jankowski. So these people were willing to come in and purchase this property, but only with the 55 and over taken off. Let's say we remove that, and then next week they sell it to somebody else. What's the guarantee that it's going to be, taken care of by somebody else? Because this market is so hot. I mean, you try to buy a house or any commercial property, and it's just crazy out in this world. So who's to say, they couldn't flip it themselves? They may have a buyer in the wings. So our only teeth in this whole game is to make sure that it stays as was originally built, and had it not been built with that 55 and over, it probably wouldn't have been built because of the property it's right next to. So the reality is, it's going to be very hard for me to even consider removing that based on that information.
Well, they can't. I'll tell you right now, like Dennis said, the evaluation that he had from the other brokers in Indiana, my client came in and made an offer so much higher that it did entice Dennis to sell. So if the price that they're paying, and then you take into account that taxes are going to increase after they purchase it, which eats out of the profit, there's no one that's going to pay on a flip to go and buy the property when there's going to be so little profit. Everything's bought on cap rates, and the cap rates would be so low that people, there is no flip. If you guys want to pass this and put in there that they have to continue to own, operate, and manage the property for a reasonable period of time, that could be a good, solution to give you peace of mind that what I'm telling you is the truth.
Okay. Something very interesting, Mr. Jankowski. You just said that the other brokers that Dennis was talking to gave him different numbers when Dennis was just in front of us and said he didn't even put it on the market. Somebody came to him.
No, he just said a few minutes ago that he had a group out of Indianapolis that gave him a price range, and my client came in and made an offer higher than that.
Well, you made it appear as if there were multiple.
Well, multiple brokers do evaluations for a property. I'm sure Dennis had a brokerage company, and there was more than one broker that helped put the assessment together, and that's why I just use it as a plural.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benicki. Mrs. Volker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hi, Mr. Jankowski. I have two questions for you. One, you mentioned that there are other Indiana properties that have been purchased and are owned by the Embassy Group. Do you recall by any chance the name of any of those properties?
They're more in southern Indiana. They're in Evansville, Newburgh area.
Yeah?
I do not know the name of them off the top of my head.
Okay, because I have a computer in my hand that I could look them up in, and I was just kind of curious about, what these other properties are and what they look like, and, just a little bit of information about them. The other question that I had is, when the Embassy Group, it looks like the Embassy Group, just doing a little bit of research, it looks like, and I might be wrong about this, but it looks like it might be a subsidiary of an international real estate firm. Am I correct?
I don't know where their money exactly comes from. They might be funded for, most groups are syndicators that have money that they put together, and I don't want to assume, but I could guess that they might have Israeli money behind them.
So one of my follow-up questions then, since it appears that the American company might be located in New York, possibly Ohio, and then anyway, who's managing the property? Are they going to be, is there a plan that they would be hiring a local management firm? Would there be management on site? Do you have any idea?
I don't know who manages for them in certain markets. There was a group out of Michigan that they had hired that does do property management that was going to help them with due diligence, but we halted due diligence and everything very quickly once we found out about the restriction, and haven't really done much because due diligence costs money, and if this approval didn't go through, they didn't want to throw money at that.
Right.
Or waste money.
Right. I guess one of the things, I'll just speak, I will speak for myself. One of the things when we're talking about neighborhoods and people that live in our community, we really like to talk to the potential owner that can really answer questions for us, because it makes it a lot easier for us. Not that you're not doing the best job that you could, but it makes it a lot easier for us to make decisions when we can ask specific questions and have them answered. As an example, you not knowing what other Indiana properties are owned by this company, and not that you necessarily should or shouldn't, but it makes it more difficult for me to do research on the company and who's purchasing and how they handle their other properties. So that's just a note that I would want to throw out there, in terms of how I like to get information prior to making a decision. Thank you.
Understood. I'm trying to pull them up as we're on this right now, but.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Volker. Mrs. DeMaid.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Jankowski, can you tell me what what the estimated cost to remodel the units would be? Because as they are now, they are for 55 and over, and I don't necessarily think 55 is elderly, but they all have bathroom handrails and things of that nature in the units. So if you're going to be renting to people who are 30 years old, you're going to have to want to go in there and remodel all of those units, and that's going to cost some money, and you're going to have to recoup that somehow. So can you tell me what you think might be the average cost to redo the units, remodel the units?
I don't know if they plan on remodeling them, but I'm just, like when I said that if people move out, things, usually, you know, the carpet might need to be replaced or cleaned, or, you know, maybe they pull the carpet out and do vinyl, you know, hardwood floor, you know, painting a unit because people bump in, there's holes in the walls from hanging TVs and, you know, mirrors and things like that. You know, if the appliances are older, it's, you know, usually on a case-by-case basis. And when you have a property that is this well occupied, you know, if you buy a property that's 30% vacant or whatever, you know, whatever percentage, sometimes they'll go and put granite countertops in and, you know, do things like that. But if I threw a number out there, I would be, you know, totally guessing.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council? Then thank you, sir. If you would, please once again place your microphone on mute for the remainder of the public hearing.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And is there anyone else participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Hearing no one, then we'll ask whether there is anyone physically present in the council chambers who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance. If you would, please come forward to the podium and begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Gerald, and my address is 818 Green Pine Court, Apartment F, Mishawaka, Indiana. I live in the Whispering Pines.
Okay.
I had also lived in the other apartment complex that Mr. Miller had. And 2 weeks after I moved in, as it was told to me, it was senior, they sold it. And it was sold to, I believe, it would be Princeton Properties out of Michigan. All I can tell you, I've lived in Mishawaka since I was 19 years old, and I love it here, and I will do whatever I can to help my city. I volunteered many times for the city of Mishawaka. I'm a graduate of Bethel College, Bachelor in Human Services. But I am also the widow of a veteran. Many of us that live in in Whispering Pines, we are widows of veterans. And it's not that we don't have an income, we do. We are kind of the middle class seniors, as you would put it. Many of us are still working. I myself work part-time. I've had to have several surgeries, but I'm not ready for assisted living yet. I'm ready to just keep going, and I'm telling you, I know Mr. Miller wants to retire, and I hope he can retire well. He made a beautiful place for us. It is so peaceful and quiet, and we have our little dogs that we can walk with no fear around that area. We love it there, and we're going to stay as long as we can. But what happened when Mr. Miller's property sold to Princeton Properties, we had grandkids within 2 weeks flourish into the living with grandma because mom can't handle them no more. So they're coming in to stay with grandma that has 2-bedroom apartments. I saw drug deals out my windows. I saw, we had a murderer on the property living with his mother. I got to see the SWAT team in action when they came for him, and I was quite impressed. But I'm just saying, these are things that happen when you have an apartment like ours is in the back by a cul-de-sac. And if there's gonna be trouble, that's where it's gonna be. We're just not far from Hickory Village. And I just don't see good things happening there if the seniors are taken out of the equation. I hope that we can stay senior. Again, I thank Mr. Miller for the nice place he gave us to live. We love it there. We don't want it to change.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any questions from the council? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else physically present who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? If so, please come forward.
Hello, my name's Al Dover, and I've lived at Whispering Pines for over 14 years. I moved there when I was 55. It's a very nice place to stay in, and I don't understand why they want to get rid of senior living around this area. You know, if they think they can just bring people in, have it open to any age, because they'll get their money and not from the seniors. Well, let me tell you, there's a lot of people that are 55 and a lot of them that are older that have the money to live somewhere, and they would like to spend their last lives with other people around their age. We are at full capacity. We've got a waiting list. And why would there be a problem keeping it a senior citizen place? We have people there that's been there a long time, like me, and it's very, very secure. You can't go anywhere else in the city of Mishawaka where you open your door and you're to the outside. In Whispering Pine, you have to have a key to get into your building, and then a key to get into your apartment inside. It's very well lit. We are in the back at the end of a road, but you know what? There's only one way in and one way out. So if there's problems, the cops come, they're not gonna get away if they're blocked that place up. So I think it should stay at 55 and older. Because you know what? If you leave it at 55 and older, a lot of you people that are gonna retire in this area, there's a lot of us out there that can afford to stay there, even if they raise the price. But you know what? They're at market price now. Why in the heck would you want to? We've got great apartments. The last 3 that Denny built, they set it up where half the apartments in the 16 units had their own washer and dryer hookup in a closet, so you can put stackables. I have that. And it's really nice because I can do my own laundry in that instead of waiting in line to use the ones out in the hallway that's available for all 16 apartments. So, you know, I really don't think that they should just say, hey, just because they get younger people in there, they're gonna make the payments instead of the older people. That's not true. Because a lot of these people nowadays, they don't even want to work. So your dependable people are the ones that have been there for all this time and are going to continue. More seniors coming in to retire want to be in a senior place. And if you take this only one left around this area away, where are they going to go? They're going to have to live with other people with younger ages than that. You know how pleasant it is to be around someone your own age, to talk about things, you got things in common. You know, when I was raising my kids on the block, I associated with all the people. And yet, you know, we all had the same things to talk about. We were all raising kids in that. Now I'm at the age where I don't have my kids with me no more. It's just, you know, we live by ourselves. There's a lot of the apartments that only have just one occupant, and they're paying the bill. I could see if they've got less than 50% occupancy, that the place is going down. Yeah, maybe then you should open it up to other people come in there. But no, it's not. We got a waiting list. We've had a waiting list for 2 years. So I really believe that it would be a mistake to change this to any age. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the council? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else physically present who wishes to speak in opposition? If so, please come forward. You're doing fine.
My name is Linda Platts, and I live at 801 Spruce Court, which is the other name of the street besides Green Pines, Whispering Pines, Mishawaka, Indiana. I've lived there for 1 year, and it'll just be 1 year. I had lost my husband, a veteran, and I lived in Edwardsburg, and I decided I wanted a more safer place to live by myself and not as much work, the yard, snow, all that stuff. So I looked all over for an apartment, and I had a deposit in at Remington Court, which was pretty nice, and then I had one at Whispering Pines. So in the meantime, I had to go to California to wait till I got an apartment and sold my house. So Whispering Pines called me. So within a month, I got in, and I love it. It's very secure. My family is very happy about the security of it. And it's very easy and mobile for people with problems. They even have a little elevator for the second floor. And I just love it. And I think it should stay that way because I don't know of any other place like that in Mishawaka, even if I paid more money. People say, well, there's this place and that place. And yes, but they're also HUD. I don't qualify for that. And also, they're either assisted living or nursing homes, and I'm not ready for that yet. So I think Whispering Pines is really the only place here for what we have. I mean, it's a senior community, handicapped, adaptable, and safety. So I hope that we can keep it that way. Now, I realize prices are going up, just like your budget meeting tonight, and it's not going to change. So I think we probably will have to pay more money. And but that's a different thing that has to be sorted out. And I would be willing to help pay a little bit more on my rent, because if I have to move, I'm going to have to pay more. So it's not going to make any difference. So that's what I have to say. So has anybody got a question for me? Yes?
Thank you. Mrs. Volker.
I just wanted to tell you, I'm really happy to hear from people who live in Whispering Pines, because the information that we received via email today was from people who lived outside of Whispering Pines. So I just wanted to say thank you for people that live in the community for coming here tonight to talk with us. Thanks.
Well, can I ask what people outside, are they for or against? I don't know them, so it doesn't make any difference, just curious.
It wasn't favorable.
Oh, really? Wow, that's sad.
No, meaning that they like it the way it is.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, that's right. Because we have that. We have.
What's their address?
That's great.
We have this other place behind us, because I live by the water, the ducks and the geese. Anyhow, and in the summertime, I'm glad there's a fence and all that wood over there, because it's quite interesting. And I'm glad I don't live over there. So I hope ours never becomes like that.
Thank you. Other questions from the council? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? Please come forward.
It's a race,
Hello, everyone. I am Patricia Gregg. I live at 715 Spruce Court, Apartment E, and I was chose to be the spokesperson for that unit. That we all got together and we decided that we wasn't going to allow that our unit to be taken away from us. We are seniors, and I've been there now 5 months. It took me 3 years to get into this apartment. Now, I'm not ready to leave yet after 3 years of putting my application in, and it always was booked. So I've been there 5 months. I have enjoyed every moment of it. My son and my daughter loves it, and they said that since it's so secure, they don't have to worry about me being around other places and other people and all the chaos that goes on. And the rest of us are the same way. We wanted to stay 55 and older. I raise kids. I have grandchildren. I have great-grandchildren. I want to see them when I want to see them, and not before, okay? So that's why I moved away from the city. I lived in South Bend. I owned a home. My husband passed away, so I sold my house in order to downsize, to come where I can just sit up and relax. Don't have to pay nobody to do my snow. Don't have to pay nobody to cut my grass. All I have to do is pay Mr. Miller or whoever for my rent and my utilities, and I enjoy that. So we would like for it to stay 55 and older, you know, because we've been there, done that, you know, and I'm sure everybody loves their children and their grandchildren like I do, but time out. So hopefully your council member will take it in consideration. We're seniors. What are you going to do? You're going to throw us away? Just throw us away? No, you're not. I know you love us. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Any questions from the council?
And
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Higginbotham,
Yes.
the last time I was here,
You had that really nice hat on that was
had a
very
really nice
sparkly,
hat.
and you were very gracious about taking it off, so I remember that.
all
Thank
right
you.
then.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
My name is Linda Turner. I live at 801 Spruce Court, Apartment J, Whispering Pines. I've been there 3 years. Like many of us others, we've lost our husbands. I am a veteran, and I was in Florida when my husband passed away. This is home for me. I left in 70, joined the service, came back in 2000. But then we went to Florida when we retired, and of course, I lost my husband. So then, I knew I had to come back home to family. I've had too many medical problems. I have a family member that basically takes care of me, and we live close by because they're always at my house apartment at least once or twice a week. And some of the things we've been hearing has been scary. We've heard, for example, our rent minimum is going up $400 as soon as these people move in. I don't know about you folks, but if your house payment went up $400, I don't think you'd sit by and not say a word. Now, granted, we know that when they move in, they're going to do what they want to do, and we understand that. We don't want to move. We want to keep it a seniors community. We love children. I have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. But because I'm prior military, they live all over the country. So we FaceTime on the computer. So I don't have much family here. And my caregiver, I couldn't ask for anyone better, who is my sister. And we live 5 minutes apart. So when this thing goes off and she's trying to make a beeline to my house, I'm hoping she's not in an accident trying to get to me. If I went anywhere else, I'd be much farther away and pay a lot more. And I know there's lots of us in this room that, yeah, we might be able to go up to 1,100 if that's what they're going to do, but some of the people can't. And instead of a waiting list to get in, you're going to have people leaving. And seniors need a place to be. Veterans need a place to be. And the people that own it now have been wonderful. We couldn't ask for better. And our manager in the office is the best. They treat us like human beings. They treat us like we're friends. We talk a lot with all of them. But some of the rumors, it's enough to give somebody a stroke. So, if I can say anything, please don't change it.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions from the council? Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
I think I'm mask. I'm fully vaccinated. I just wear a mask, okay?
Thank you.
My name is Cal Dorn. I live at 715 Apartment C at Whispering Pines, and I moved there last December. I really don't have to say much more. I think the people said, and it sounds like the ladies and gentlemen on the council, I think you're hearing what you're asking these people. And Mr. Miller, I understand you'd like to sell your property. We understand that. We just don't want it to change. And we're asking for you people to consider that. And it sounds like you kind of favor that in the way you're talking and asking these gentlemen questions and the ladies, that you are concerned about the senior citizens. I'm one of them. And I say thank you for hearing us.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the council? No. False alarm, sir. There are no questions, but thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Anthony Hack, 722 Green Pine Court, Apartment K, Mishawaka. My wife and I have been here for 7.5 years. Right now, I got 2 herniated discs in my back, and they said surgery may not cure. And my wife is the last stage of MS. And when we left Michigan City, we went everywhere over there. Nobody had any sidewalks or anything for you to wheel your wheelchair up. And when we come over here, we fell in love with this place. And they've been very nice to us. And I just hope that they don't take the senior out. Because my wife and I, she got in an accident, so shouldn't be telling that. But she got in an accident June 1st, and we had to get another car. So now we're scraping the barrel to make it. And nobody's told us if we're going to have to pay property taxes, if we're going to have to pay water and sewage. All I pay right now is electric and NIPSCO gas. So we don't know. We're lost out here. You know, it's just like throwing us to the wolves. And I hope you people realize that and take that into consideration, that, you know, we are human beings and we're not out here lying to anybody, trying to make a point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, sir. Then is there anyone else physically present who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Annie Young. I live at 3005 Remington Court, Apartment B, Mishawaka, Indiana, 5 minutes from Whispering Pines. Yes, that's my sister. And you've heard what they've said, and I have to agree. It is vitally important. I've been a home caregiver professionally. I've worked in nursing homes and assisted living, now retired. And Whispering Pines is the step before the nursing home. And a lot of people they're not ready. They don't want to go there. My sister would probably have to be in one, if not for Whispering Pines. It's very important, and the most important thing is it's secure. The doors are locked. It's a nice little community. There is no place else. In Mishawaka, I don't even know if there is in South Bend for 55 and older like Whispering Pines has to offer. So it would be a really sad, sad shame if they lost it. And I appreciate that a lot of you are sounding like you understand that. So I guess the most important thing is put yourself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from. And again, I understand you want to retire, but find somebody who will keep it 55 and older. It would be a shame to lose that part of Mishawaka. The world is so crazy right now. And even Mishawaka is starting to have more problems. But this community needs to stay intact. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else then who is physically present and who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? If so, please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance?
Mr. President.
Mr. Benicki.
Earlier today, we received an email from some neighbors. Would it be okay to read that in opposition?
Please feel free to do so, Mr.
Okay.
Benicki.
This is an email received today to all council people. It says, I have attached a petition the members of Jamestown have put together for the voting on Whispering Pines restriction lift. They are concerned about what will happen if the restriction 55 and older is lifted. I hope this will be taken into consideration. Thank you, Jill Horvath, manager. Then it says at the top of the petition, Jamestown Homes are writing to express our strong opposition to the rezoning of Whispering Pines Apartments. This will cause traffic and safety problems and noise. We would like the apartments to stay 55 and older. We are concerned about the apartment being resold and what the future outcome would be. We urge you to disapprove the proposed rezoning, and there are 105 signatures. Thank you.
Thank you. And since Mr. Benicki has taken us down this path, are there any other council members who wish to speak at this point? Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out one thing. I misunderstood at our last meeting. I was under the impression that these were not market rate apartments and that the purchase of these apartments would move them into a market rate status, for lack of a better terminology. But I just wanted to, I appreciate that clarification that they are currently market rate apartments with 20% or so subsidized housing. I also wanted to thank Mr. Jankowski for sending information. We have a WebEx chat, so Mr. Jankowski is remote, and he sent information about some other Indiana complexes that the Embassy Group currently manages, and I just wanted to tell Mr. Jankowski that I appreciate that, and just wanted to let our council members know that he shared that information with us. And then finally, I just really, as I said before, really appreciate people from the community coming in to discuss their concerns with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Volker. Mr. Mamalenti.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll start off by thanking Mrs. Turner for her service to the country and so many other folks that had spouses to do the same as well. I just want to applaud Mr. Miller as well for apparently building such a superior product. I mean, it's extremely rare that you hear so many residents speak so highly of the property, the amenities, and management and the landlords. So kudos to you. The older I get, the more I value safety and quality of life. And I know, at a younger age, I may have some more options than some of you folks in terms of income and ability to move and adapt. And I believe that you guys have fell in love with the property and were sold the idea of this product of safety, quality of life. And you asked for us to put ourselves in your shoes. And I have, and I envision my mother coming up here and speaking. And as a child, I have the peace of mind if she was in a facility or in a residence that is so secure that I could feel safe at night knowing that she is safe. So I struggle with lifting this restriction, and I just don't know. I just can't be in favor of this ordinance. And there's something else I was going to say, but I had forgotten. And
Maybe you're
main-
closer
the main-
than you think.
Yeah. So if I can,
If there's an
if I
opening,
get
we might-
past that waiting list. Good point, Mrs. Volker. And I'm sure we'll probably be in the same unit, so.
Thank you.
But again, Mr. Miller, I understand that you want to retire as well. I think just from the word of mouth and what these folks have said about this property and the management and 100% capacity and the 2 to 3 year waiting list, I don't think that this property will have an issue selling. If you have a great product, it will sell, and it sounds like that you do. So, in the fact that I would not want Mr. Dover to wrestle me, since he's a state champ and all, I am not. Yeah. So, I will be in opposition to this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mamalenti. Mr. Emmons.
Thank you, Mr. President. With this proposed ordinance, it came up in the Plan Commission meeting, and it was rejected basically 4-1. One of the main reasons was because Mr. Miller made his presentation, but we could never hear from the owners. And a broker isn't the owner. I, for one, like to hear from not only the past owner, but the present owner, and also the one that's purchasing the property, to get some answers. You don't get all the answers from a broker. Not at least the answers that you want to hear in that. So I, along with Mr. Mamaleni, cannot support this ordinance. I will be voting against it. And I appreciate all of you coming here. I appreciate the ones that came to the Plan Commission meeting to express your concerns. That's what it takes. If you have a problem, you have a concern, you need to voice it. And I'm very appreciative that you did come and you voiced your concerns. And as a council member, I listen. And I'm sure the rest of the council members do the same. They listen to their constituents for what their concerns are, and probably will vote that way. So I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Any other questions or comments from the council? Then let me state for the record that through the diligent research of the clerk's office, I have been reminded of the fact that, as was referenced earlier, when this matter first came before the council back in 1998, I was an attorney in private practice, and although I don't have any current business relationship with Mr. Miller or anybody else affiliated with this property, it's always been my practice not to cast a vote as an elected official on a matter that I was involved in as a private attorney, so I will be abstaining from this vote this evening. But I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't thank all of you for the presentations that you've made this evening. Obviously, this is an issue that speaks to your heart, and you're very passionate about it, but to a person, everybody has been very respectful and very appropriate in their comments, and that includes Mr. Miller, not just in terms of what he said when he was at the podium, but he's sat here very respectfully and he has listened to what everybody has had to say. And whatever the outcome here, I think you're all to be congratulated for providing those who are here, and hopefully those who have witnessed this, with a little bit of a civics lesson with regard to how passionate issues should be handled, whether it's on the national or the local level. And reasonable people can disagree, but you've done a great job this evening of representing yourselves and the community very well, so I thank you for that. And with that, if there are no other questions or comments, I will call for the question.
Question?
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mrs. DeMade?
No.
Mr. Beninky?
No.
Mr. Hazen?
No.
Mr. Mamalenti?
No.
Mr. Emmons?
No.
Mr. Belovich?
No.
Mr. Compton?
No.
Mrs. Volker?
No.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
I abstain.
The ordinance fails 8-0 with one recusal.
Thank you. With that, we will move into new business. Is there any new business to come before the council? Mr. Emmons?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to point out again and thank our Honorable Mayor Dave Wood for participating in my monthly meeting with my constituents. He was very gracious to recap of some incidents that was probably in the West End, and he spent all the time that was needed to assure the residents that things were being taken care of. And that was very much appreciated, Mayor. And also, he gave a nice presentation of the state of the city. And he was very, very generous of his time. He came at 7, and we left at 9:30. And like I say, he never pushed. He didn't say, hey, it's getting late, we got to go. So I know my constituents were very appreciative of that. I was too, and I just wanted to point that out to the mayor. So I thank you very, very much. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Any other new business to come before the council?
Mr. Mamaleni and I would like to request 2 months at Twin Branch.
Yeah.
4 hours each.
Back to back.
We will let you gentlemen fight that off off the floor. Any other new business to come before the council? Then before we wrap up, let me announce that in order to facilitate the submission to the council of additional applications for our appointment to the School City of Mishawaka Board of School Trustees, we are going to extend the deadline for interested members of the public and the community to submit an application to us. The deadline will now be extended until Friday, October 29th at noon, which is this Friday. So again, we will continue to accept applications until that deadline and then move forward with interviews and selections of applicants for that position. And if there is no other new business to come before the council, a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
No moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.